Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Mark Adams and the Red Raiders are on the road this weekend from Morgantown, West Virginia. Can they continue to keep things interesting? And could Pop Isaacs possibly get back to poppin'? Also, Brett Yormark, Big 12 scheming. We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be a part of your day once again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Muchas gracias for making us your first listen each day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, and today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. Chris, great to be back with you, wrapping up a week and looking ahead to a weekend. And it wasn't too long ago that I was talking Tech hoops-wise, personal goals. Look within to determine what you're playing for from game to game, because there would be nothing up for grabs by this point in the season. I was wrong about that. We're actually sitting here today not just talking about personal team-oriented goals or team-building-oriented goals, but you want to improve a resume, and man, it gets tough as you are on the road headed to Morgantown, West Virginia, with honest to goodness NCAA tournament dreams. As long as those odds might be right now, you can shorten them up a little bit if you can find some success. But man, it's not going to be easy away from your building. Hasn't been easy away from your building. And when this team came to your building, it was one of the worst games of the year, man. One of the most disheartening nights really that I can remember the last time you had the Mountaineers on the other bench.
Yeah, I would say that I think the worst game you've had all season was going to Ames, Iowa. That just was a bloodbath of sorts, and then this was probably the second worst. Game. And keep in mind that was the thing about it. It's just been 3-4 weeks ago, but you started that game out 10-2, and you're playing well, and you could tell there was a sense of urgency and all that, and we had all looked at it like, okay, if you're gonna, not go winless through the Big 12. This is the one you're going to have to get. You're going to have to beat West Virginia. I think you were a favorite in that game. Well, like 5 minutes into the game, you're up 10-2, and Bob Huggins basically takes all 5 starters out, puts 5 subs in, and they ultimately just kind of go crazy on you. The bench outscored you 50-15 that night. You had Joe Toussaint and Seth Wilson go for, I think, somewhere around like 35 points combined off the bench, which was way off of the norm compared to what they had done. But it was just kind of that kind of night. I mean, I think you were minus 18 on the glass. I mean, that just kind of summed it all up. I mean, this is in West Virginia, and since Javon Carter and that whole crew that was really, really good the year that the Red Raiders went to the Elite Eight, most of the time West Virginia struggles to score, but they're really good on defense, and they just try to hammer you on the glass. And that night, they not only did they hit shots, but they hammered you on the glass. I think they made 10 threes that night. So and you've got another trip early next week to another team that came into your building and beat you, Cowan. So as we stated earlier in the week, you gotta, if you want to give yourself a chance here, you've got to win one of these road games. Some would say you've got to win both and then win the 2 home games. I'm kind of not counting the trip to Kansas. That's going to be extremely difficult, but
hopefully neither does the selection committee.
Yeah, that's right. But going to Morgantown and Norman, on paper, these are winnable games. I think, talent-wise, these are winnable games. And in fact, you may be getting healthier heading into the weekend.
Yeah, I like that little tidbit there. Let's just dive right in, because the last time we saw West Virginia, part of the disheartening was not just the drubbing. It was also the fact that you saw a really good basketball player, and what up to that point, it was at least one of your 2 most impactful, if not the most impactful player on your roster, and Pop Isaacs leave the court in great anguish And sounds like maybe the clouds are parting a little bit. Are we going to see a ray of Pop sunshine possibly this weekend?
At this point, as you and I talk, I really think there's a pretty good chance that he suits up and plays against West Virginia. And again, as you mentioned, that's the last time we've seen him. Now, again, like Fardaws, when you go back to early part of the year in Austin, you're like, okay, he's going to play. Is he going to play 2 minutes? Is it going to be 10 minutes? Is it going to be 29 minutes like he did that night? I don't know, but if Pop can give you some semblance of normal minutes, okay, we're not asking him to play 30 plus, but if he can get into the 15 to 25 range, that sweet spot there, I mean, there's because here's some of the things that come with it. I mean, turnovers may go up a little bit. I mean, Pop he got better as the season went along with turning the ball over.
Yeah.
But there's still some issues there. Shot making should go up, but here's the tricky part: is that when you play Pop and Davion Harmon together, and I don't know why you wouldn't. However, there's a give and take there. You're really small on defense, okay, and you get switched off, and these are 2 6-foot-ish, just above it guards. Okay, they're both tough. They're both quick, I think, but you're just not as long and athletic, which kind of hurts you maybe a little bit on the glass. It maybe hurts you a little bit trying to get deflections in the passing lanes or getting posted up and all that stuff. So there's some plus minus there, but I absolutely hope he plays and plays well and is healthy. And I could just tell he's kind of been ramping it up here, and he ran off the floor the other night after warmups, and I'm like, okay, all right, young fella, you gonna go in there and put a uniform on? But so we'll see. We'll see what we get. I don't want anybody to expect that he for sure plays or that he plays a full like a normal game like we last saw him. So, but yeah.
I mean, before the last time we saw him, Chris, he had scored, I think, 8 straight games in double figures. 7 of those 8 games were in the Big 12. He hasn't been the most efficient basketball player. I mean, he's shooting like 36% from the field, 37% from beyond the arc. Had some turnover problems earlier in the year. You mentioned it did trend towards improving. But the dude is making his first run through the league,
Agreed.
and I've had no problems, absolutely, with what we've gotten out of Pop Isaacs. I am salivating at the thought, Chris, of Big Maple standing at the free throw line for 40 minutes and just letting Pop Isaacs move without the ball all over the court and feeling like Maple's going to find him somewhere, catch and shoot at the hoop, whatever it might be. I love the possibilities there, which, by the way, I just love the possibilities of Big Maple as a new generation Arvydas Sabonis there at the top of the key, just dishing, diamond, and directing in all directions. But I've seen, just before we leave this basketball conversation, I want to get your take on this. I've seen like what I consider to be, I don't know, somewhere borderline, maybe psychotic thoughts in our YouTube comments, which is not maybe all that unusual for a YouTube comment section. But have you seen these thoughts out there that some are like, wow, is this team, really so good defensively last time out because Pop Isaacs isn't in the mix? Should Pop Isaacs be coming off of the bench possibly? Or, I mean, that blows my mind that you would even consider that. So maybe that's just internet people being weird. But, like, was there something that made Tech a better defensive team when Isaacs wasn't out there? I'm timid to even ask the question, but I'm sure you've seen some of this too.
Yeah, look, winning and losing makes people feel certain ways, and I think you look at it. I mean, here's the other. I haven't seen a lot of this, but I wouldn't surprise if some are like, "Oh, you're so much better with that without Daniel Baccio." I mean, he's missed the last 2 games. Guess
seen
what?
that too.
You've won both of those games. I just disagree with that. I think it's up to coaches to put good players in positions, and it's up to you to create chemistry and rotation and kind of get kids to understand their roles and all those things. But as far as like being a worse team with Pop Isaacs, on the floor, I don't buy that a bit. I just think that there's too much shot making. There's too much, playmaking. And honestly, he kind of before he went down, and you were close to rock bottom. I think he really was emerging as a bit of a leader for you, and kind of the ones that, because I'm a firm believer that quiet teams get beat. I believe that, and really, regardless of sport, I just think quiet teams get beat, and there's a lot of personalities on this team that they kind of defer to one another, and they're because they're either new or young or both. And I think Pop was starting to feel comfortable in his own skin there by kind of speaking up to people and not being afraid to hold others accountable and things like that. So I just and those are the intangibles that nobody sees.
He commanded some of that. His production commanded some of that. It's not like he just stepped in and was like, all right, everybody listen to me.
And that's
the player he was resulted in some of that. And you saying that a quiet team, regardless of sport, doesn't win, I think results probably in some kid out there saying, the quiet game? I've been lied to all this time that the best way to win was to shut the hell up. No, mommy and daddy are just pulling a trick on you to get you to be quiet in the damn car so you haven't got to pull it over, cut off this podcast, and tax that ass. That's what's really happening, kids. All right, well, looking forward to this opportunity and looking forward to it doubly maybe if we're getting Pop Isaac's action back in the mix. We're having this conversation on Friday morning, so we're not that far off from tip-off. So hopefully that trend will continue to head in that direction, and maybe we'll see Isaac's back on the floor. We're back on Monday to process it all, of course. For better or worse, are we still NCAA dreaming on Monday? Or are we back to playing for pride? My lips quivering when I just think about that thought. We'll find out. Join us then to find out for yourself. Coming up dead ahead, let's go to the boardroom because Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark was on the Canzano and Wilner podcast, chief simps and water bucket carriers for the Pac-12 conference, which was just a really interesting pairing, but also some really interesting sound we want to bring you from Brett Yormark. We'll get to expansion targets, expansion criteria, TV deals, streaming platforms for better or worse, and some other thoughts from Commissioner Yormark coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. And now's the perfect time to download FanDuel because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app right now. It's safe, secure, super easy to use, and you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores, three-pointers, whatever you got. If basketball is your thing, college hoops on and popping, midway point of the NBA season now in the rear view, and we're looking ahead to March Madness just around the corner. So get in with FanDuel today. Download it right now and get hooked up as a new customer with the no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with that good old same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/Locked On. That's FanDuel.com/Locked On to learn more and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for joining us once again on Locked On Texas Tech. Always great to have you along for the ride from out west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down. Thanks for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Hope you make Locked On College Basketball your second listen, your one-stop college hoops shop. It's the Locked On Podcast Network's brand new cast for that. Sorry, I was reminded this week there are 7-year-old daughters out in the audience, and I do apologize to those who are making their way to school. I hope that Locked On College Basketball in a very family-friendly way will be your second listen. Chris, let's take a listen to Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark, who was on the Canzano and Wilner podcast. West Coast media pundits, talking heads, cover the Pac-12, hate the Big 12. They don't even think the Big 12 could turn a Buffalo nickel for a TV media rights deal. They've been wrong on just about everything they've called so far. But Brett Yormark, out of the kindness of his heart, decided to sit down and visit with these guys. And there were some really interesting thoughts from Mr. Yormark. Want to get to him here with you. Some of that involving, of course, expansion criteria, basketball value we'll get to in just a moment. But wanted to first, Chris, give you this sound from Commissioner Yormark as it relates to the television deal the Big 12 struck and kind of how that came to be, why the timing was important. And I was also very interested to hear him as well give some thoughts on, I guess, the place, the appropriate place at this point in time for a streaming platform. Here is Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark.
The way I was looking at it, candidly from a strategic point of view was, what do we need now? What does the Big 12 need now? And what do we need during the next term? And for me, I felt it was all about being on the biggest platform and having the greatest reach possible, having great promotion, and turning many of our emerging brands or our member institution brands into household brands. And what would provide me with the best opportunity to do that? I felt ESPN and Fox were the ones, for sure. Now, are we moving towards a more digital environment? Not overnight. It's going to take time. And I think by the next bite at the apple, which will be in 31, obviously we'll go into the market before that, but 31, at that point in time, we might think about things differently.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the conversation that we've been having about Amazon and NFL on Thursday night and how it did okay. I think maybe it did better than Amazon thought, but I think you go talk to a lot of people, they just didn't watch it because they didn't want to get deep into the menu of their TV and then not be able to change the channel and watch the other college game on or watch some wrestling or the Big Bang Theory, so many of our friends.
Man, you fell off so quick from another college game. From another college game with the wrestling or the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Whatever.
No ancient aliens.
But he's right in that the accessibility and the ease of getting to the content of your conference is, and whether it's the current generation or kind of the sweet spot there, or whether everybody's just not fully committed to streaming platforms yet, the fact that you could get, similar monies without Oklahoma and Texas that you have been getting, and then do it without, putting it on a streaming platform, I think that was a win-win for Brett Yormark. And I think we had talked about this the last couple of years. Everybody in this space was like fearful or just kind of knew it was a foregone conclusion. A lot of Big 12 stuff is going to be, streamed. And I think that is still semi going to be the case, but it's basically what you've been used to.
Yeah, it's not going to be worse than it was.
Yeah, there are no changes. I mean, the occasional ESPN Plus basketball game, that's the gist of it right now. And every baseball game being on ESPN Plus and all those kinds of things. I don't envision a lot of that changing. Some of your basketball could be on Fox though, as opposed to ESPN, so that could alter it a bit. But yeah, I think he's done well here.
And since we're talking streaming, Chris, let me bring you this sound as well. This is from a different podcast. This is the Marshawn and Urand podcast, which are two sports media reporters. Great guys to gather info from if you're interested in this kind of thing. One for the New York Post, one for the Sports Business Journal. And they were actually talking about Amazon's perspective this week on what they were actually shopping for. So we've had so many conversations about, boy, would one of these streaming platforms just back up the truck because they want to get in the game. Not only does that not seem to be the case, it seems to be the total opposite, as in they want not games, but a game, and they ain't backing up the truck. Here's some thoughts on that as it relates to streaming platforms in general, but specifically the Amazon perspective when it comes to, say, the Pac-12 media deal.
Amazon, they don't want tonnage. So could they go for the Pac-12? Yeah, I think they could. But I think that there's a better chance that maybe they save up for the NBA, NASCAR. And I don't think that they're going to go crazy. So I think you're not ending up on a streamer. We think Thursday Night Football has been successful. I'm not sure if it works as well with the Pac-12. You're not ending up on a streamer. If you do, you kind of want to get paid out the nose. That I'm not going to say you never want to say 100%. 99.9%. If they end up on Amazon, it's going to just be a comparable price that you get from networks. Nothing crazy.
If they end up on Amazon, Amazon only wants one game package, like a game a week. Amazon only wants the top game. Well, they're not going to skim and give that top game to Amazon. That's what's valuable about this package. So they're trying to keep that and make, the second, third, maybe even fourth game available.
And that brings us to ESPN and Bob Iger's comment on the earnings call for Disney. He mentioned Jimmy Pitaro and how they're going to have to be more selective. So I don't know if they're not getting ESPN, they're not getting Amazon, they're not getting Fox. Could someone like Apple be a wild card? But the problem with Apple is that you're still on a streamer. It's just not as well known. I don't know if that works.
That's so interesting, Chris, because there's like this dream of, well, if our games are going to be more obscure, at least we're getting filthy rich by going with these guys. But it's not the case there. And they're saying, hey, we want your best game and we'll hide it for you. I mean, that was a pretty interesting turn of events, I guess, to hear this week for me, at least.
Yeah, I think the markets have changed a bit the last 6 months to a year in like the way that ratings are working and everything like that. I think that people, that Amazon, experiment, if you will, that I think that got a lot of people paying attention, because if the NFL can't move the needle big, I mean, and right. So because Amazon paid a ton of money to acquire that. I mean, that's where they did back up the truck, and maybe they don't want to, spend as much on other, properties or
there's
content.
only one NFL, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, and they, they got a big time announcing crew with Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit. I mean, these are household names. Some of the games that Amazon had were not great, but it's the NFL. It's king. Without fail, it is king, and they spent a lot of money on the production and the cameras and just all the stuff that comes with it. So maybe they're not tapped out. You go look at what Amazon's worth. They can spend what they want. However, they just may decide, we dabbled. We're going to try to get really good here, but we're not going to do too many other crazy things. And that's where I think Yormark was really smart to jump in the front of the line. I think because if he had any indication, and we'll never know, maybe we will at some point. Maybe there'll be a 30 for 30 about it someday if the Pac-12 gets destroyed. But if he had any indication that these streaming properties weren't, willing to pay, and I guess he probably did, okay? Because, I mean, I think maybe that's where he was reading the room and kind of trying to get people in a bidding war and just kind of seeing what was out there, whether he did or consultants did or whatever. And maybe that's also why it made sense to go with a linear platform where it's more exposed to the general consumer.
I mean, why would you not, unless you had to get creative? And by had, I mean forced, which the Pac-12 might. But Yormark, you heard it just a minute ago, said it right there at the beginning. We want to improve brands, and the two biggest, baddest boys on the block to do that, ESPN and Fox. Duh. So for all the conversations about all the different ways you could get to this deal, it's like, no, if ESPN and Fox will let you eat at their table, saddle up, bring the big purse, honey, because we're eating at that table. And I've said it before, streaming on ESPN Plus at the beginning of the venture, I don't think I did it for like a year, to be honest. Not until I could rob somebody's password at first. I still don't even know. I'm so damn confused with the apps we have on Apple TV. I don't know what we're paying for, what we're copying passwords for. I can't remember. I don't know if I ever gave $5 over for ESPN. I don't know if my wife subscribing to some Disney grooming project got us ESPN Plus. I have no clue, but I'm able to watch like Tech Baseball all of a sudden somehow, or an ESPN Plus game, whatever. So I'm not complaining. But Chris, from the beginning to now, it got a lot easier to watch, specifically ESPN Plus. I've said it before. I have Hulu, so I just know that firsthand. They integrated it into the guide. It's just another channel on the list now. You don't get out of the app to go to a different app. So even when we're talking about the Big 12 streaming scenario, ESPN Plus ain't exactly like going to Amazon Prime or going to Apple Plus or going to Pluto TV, which I love. It's free, and I got a great Western channel. Anybody would love to have their game shown on Pluto. Let me tell you that firsthand. But I just feel like really right now, Brett Yormark has put Texas Tech and the Big 12 Conference in as good of a position as they could have possibly hoped to be in as far as a media rights deal, because you're back at the big boys table and you are getting some of this other stuff, I suppose, out of the way as far as little digital transitions here or there for your audience. And Chris, I think you and I talked about this off the air yesterday, but he described it. You told me he described it really as a change from what you wanted to what you needed, possibly from a network perspective, because there are literally inventory spots to fill. And by the Big 12 getting there in line first, they're like, all right, here's our bucket of stuff you can fill it with if you want to. And so they took that stuff. And now the Pac-12 is like, well, we got this bucket too. And they're saying, well, we only need about a quarter maybe of that bucket.
Exactly.
It's not about what we want anymore. It's just about what spots do we have to fill, which is context I really haven't considered until you brought that up yesterday and kind of put it in those terms. But it really seems like Yormark, again, by getting out there in front, was able to put the Big 12 Conference in the best possible position you can imagine. So we can all be glad for that. I want to get to the next positions, though, that he may be putting the conference in, because this is now the next, I guess, juicy item on the ledger. I forgot what the top three was for Yormark. I've seen this list floating around, but what was it? TV
it was TV deal. It was Oklahoma, Texas, like, resolution, exit,
Yes.
Whatever, get that solidified. So 1 done, 2 done, and then the third was absolutely expansion.
Here we go. And back to the Canzano and Wilner podcast, Brett Yormark talking about expansion criteria, and was also asked about where basketball can fall into the mix. Obviously, in the Big 12, number one country in the conference as far as men's basketball. Is it traditionally undervalued? Where you see it in the future? Commissioner Yormark spoke on that and more. Here is Brett Yormark.
When I think of expansion, I think about it in a couple of ways: performance, cultural fit, time zone, and geography. So, we go through this modeling, if you will. Is it the right fit for us? And, I continue to think about expansion for all the right reasons and what's going to be additive to our conference in every way possible. When you think about basketball specifically, I do feel that basketball is undervalued in this industry. And I've got numbers and data to show it. But putting that aside for a minute, I just think it's been undervalued. And it's been bundled with football. I think at some point in time, that value proposition needs to change. Obviously, I speak to that from a position of strength because we are the number one conference in America when you think about college basketball. At the right time, I'm sure we're going to be able to monetize it. So I think there's real upside there going forward.
Chris, aren't we just about to get into kind of an experiment here on that last point with men's basketball? I'm really intrigued by this. We've talked about this before, but the Fox presence now, as they made a little bigger play towards men's basketball, I don't know if it's an experiment exactly, but I think we're about to see maybe how much that can be boosted or monetized, specifically by Fox, who it sounds like wants maybe a little bit bigger presence within the men's basketball world.
Yeah, and this is exactly why Gonzaga has entered this whole conversation. I mean, you're Brett Yormark is basically like, because tell me what part of Gonzaga is he not talking about when he goes down that list of looking at expansion? Because he talks about different time zone, geography, value with the brand and all that, and then basketball is undervalued. I mean, like, that's Gonzaga just all kinds of lights just flashing all over the place. But I think that's why this is a bit outside the box. A bit. I think that I think the way he's thinking is that they want to, and that's why I don't know if it would ever happen. But I do think that's why Vegas is so attractive to him and like the UNLV component, because if they couldn't get the Big 12, say, basketball tournament to move there, because Kansas City does a phenomenal job and it is absolutely, supported 100% in Kansas City. It kind of makes me sick because I don't think it's necessarily fair to the southern teams like those in the state of Texas and even Oklahoma. But I do think that would be something he would look at, and if even then, I think I could envision a scenario to where they have some sort of preseason league tournament or something in Vegas. I think that Vegas is very much on his mind with basketball in mind, if you will. Football as well. Football as well. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But because you have to understand what Yormark in his past, it's Barclays Center, and it's as much concerts and like all that industry as much as it is the Brooklyn Nets and kind of everything that comes with that. So this is his world. And so I think that's why he's talking about basketball. And I don't know what data he's got. I love
that part. You want to challenge it right now, Canzano? You want to challenge it, Wilner? Because I got papers right here. That sounded more like a threat than anything.
I have data to back this up because I can't tell you the last time I watched a Pac-12 basketball game. Really, I don't know.
You seen their latest conference projections? 2, Chris. 2 entries into the NCAA tournament. Amazing.
And so that's why I would just say, you're not real sure what this expansion scenario looks like. Once Oklahoma and Texas leave, you're at 12. You're just not real sure, you just looking for 2? You looking for 4? Would you go really big here? And then then who knows, so
I don't, before we get away from the Vegas thing, I don't really get the Vegas thing. Can you give me some context from your perspective on that? Like, it's not like,
I think he sees it. I think he sees the city as a place to funnel money through the to the Big 12 through. If that makes sense. Like I've seen things about a Las Vegas Bowl tie-in now with the Big 12 that used to be the SEC maybe or the Pac-12, whatever. I think he's thinking that this is where we can we can have events here, and some are going to argue that you could do a lot of this anyway. But I think that like the UNLV component, it's like you're now attached, and like that there's a reason or more than one reason why you're coming to Vegas, because he sees Vegas as it's all about revenue, I guess, to sum it up. I mean, this is the entertainment capital of the world. This is where anybody's fan base is going to have a segment of it that is going to go to events here.
Okay.
And I think I think he just sees revenue potential. I think he's trying to grow the conference's revenue. I think he sees Vegas as a great place to do that. People go there and spend a ton of money anyway, whether it's vacationing or going to see the Blue Man Group or going to see whatever the hell you're going to see, or just wasting it at the craps table.
Albino elephants, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm a little lost on that kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like all these leagues, like professional leagues until recently, that have made themselves these huge behemoths. Like nobody's had to have a Vegas presence. UNLV, does anybody know what UNLV is doing? I don't. I just like Vegas. I know bright light city gonna set my soul. I know all that. I get it. But I'm just wondering, like, how does it help Texas Tech if you're like, hey, they're playing in Vegas? I get the trip part. I hadn't really considered that. And you're certainly, I think, right on that. Although I got a little fearful when you were talking about it's another way to pump money through Vegas to the Big 12. I'm thinking like Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci all of a sudden. I just hope nobody's thumbs get hit with a claw hammer. But I like the ambition is what I'd say. Even if I'm having a little trouble like figuring out how it really tangibly is going to improve the league. I like getting your name, I guess, in those circles, right? And like telling Las Vegas, hey, we want to be a partner of your city, basically. So I don't know, maybe there is something there that will come to the surface, and then I'll come back and do another episode and be like, oh yeah, well, this is absolutely why you wanted to be really tied in to Vegas. But it also scared me a little bit, saying like, well, then you're tied to UNLV. I'm like, okay, do I want to be tied to UNLV? I'm trying to figure out again. I don't know. I'm very conflicted on the basketball only stuff or basketball members or. Yeah.
And Kellen, I'd love to hear I have some intimate knowledge of kind of Yormark's thought process of Vegas. However, I can't begin to tell you what his pitch is on UNLV and Gonzaga specifically, but I think we're connecting dots here. There are some easier dots to connect, which we have discussed here. But I don't know, like when he's getting in front of the president Skubaniks of these committees and folks across the Big 12, what is Brett Yormark's pitch as to why he feels very strongly about this school, or not this market or not that market. So I don't begin to exactly know, but I think that we've laid some groundwork there on kind of some of the thought process, but he may have a lot more to it than that. I just know some of this stuff has been discussed for months, but some of it is fairly new as well. But bottom line is, I think Brett Yormark is going to expand this league. It's just a matter of with who and when it is and how you go about doing that.
I don't know what he's got in his pitch, but I bet he's got numbers and data. In his pitch. And I know he likes Las Vegas, but it's almost like he's never even heard of Ruidoso. We're just skipping right over Ruidoso for some reason. I'm not quite sure about that. Before we get out of here, one more thought from Brett Yormark, because this does touch on, to sum it up, just what you ended with there. Like, expansion is coming. Who are the targets? Where are we looking? And he doesn't divulge everything, but maybe you can glean something from between the lines here from this comment from Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark.
Not targeting anyone specifically. I said, and I've been saying it, I've been pretty transparent and intentional that we'd like that fourth time zone to create more value for our media partners. We're entering a third time zone, obviously, with our expansion that becomes official in July with, the 4 great new schools coming into our conference. But would I like to be a national conference in all the different time zones and from a geography standpoint, have our Big 12 flag all over the country? 100%.
Interesting. Manifest Destiny Conference, Chris. I called it a long time ago. We're almost there, coast to coast, baby.
Yeah, he also went on in that interview to call his relationship with George Kliavkoff very collegial, which I thought was funny because Kliavkoff has used that same word in different settings, and I couldn't tell. I take Yormark at face value in that he does have a working relationship with it, but again, it's competition, and so. Again, what does this look like? I mean, we've kind of, I think, established anybody in the Pac-12 is a possible option, and then we've talked about the Gonzagas and the UNLVs. I don't think the San Diego States are. Obviously SMU is not going to be a part of anything. I don't know if we're talking mega conference, if we're talking slight additions. I think some of that is a matter of what is available and what other people want. And when I mean other people, I mean what's the Big Ten want. And the like, because I just know this, at some point, some of these back end Pac-12 schools are screwed. That's the big picture here. That's where somebody gets left without a seat at the big boy table. And you're really, the Big 12 is not really at the big boy table, but you're not at the kids table either. You're kind of in that, the I don't know, meaty middle, if you will, but it's a lot better place to be than being at the kids' table where all they have is, corn dogs and French fries they're like frozen.
Yeah, they're eating ribeyes at the other table.
And you baked it. You baked the corn dog. No, it got to be deep fried, dog. Yeah, that's right.
What? What are these, some vegans we're talking about? Baking a corn dog? Is that how you make it safe? Yeah, the Big 12 is right in the middle, and I was curious. You went with meaty middle. There's also gooey and soggy middle that was
there you go.
To you. You went with meaty, and maybe that's the Brett Yormark impact. Got you working with some confidence in Big 12 land here and now. Chris, great perspectives as always, man. Some really interesting stuff from Brett Yormark, and obviously we've got very interesting days ahead on that front and a really interesting day ahead on the Texas Tech hoops front. Hope you enjoy Morgantown, West Virginia. Maybe you'll have time to get by the Gandy Candy Memorial, but either way, you'll take in some hoops. Hopefully that's enjoyable, man. Safe travels.
I will send you a picture of the best thing that's in Morgantown. It is the statue of the logo. This is West Virginia, is where Jerry West, went to played his college basketball, and so that's obviously the NBA logo. But he's right out in front.
I thought you were going to send me a picture of a W and a V. I was like, why do I want to see West Virginia's logo? The logo.
Yeah.
The logo.
No, the NBA logo. Yeah, Jerry West. That was my bad. I didn't mean to mislead you there. But no,
I'm an idiot.
All good. Hopefully the Red Raiders play well, give themselves a chance. So we'll talk about it next time. And because we'll be talking about another important one either way going to Norman early next week. But have a good weekend, man.
That's right. You too. And would love to see poppin possibly come Saturday. So we'll find out, and we'll be back here to discuss it on the other side. Thanks for joining us throughout the week. Catch up on any episodes you might have missed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Always appreciate being your first listen, and hope you'll make Locked On College Basketball your second listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Hope you have a great one. We'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.